Brothers and sisters, we are one country. We are one people.
We have all seen the script before, over and over. The black South African populations keep chasing illegal immigrants, beating them up, looting their shops, and even torching them. They keep crying foul that illegal immigrants are taking over their jobs, but cow whenever they get to the white neighborhoods. Recently, we saw the same South African people beating up a pregnant woman from Zimbabwe. They beat up a Ghanaian man, and the list goes on and on. This behavior is disgusting and reeks of entitlement. People who have come across videos like this keep saying that the black South African population is lazy and keeps whining about apartheid over 30 years after it ended. Fair enough. Now, let me flip the script to help you understand how the black South African citizens suffer in their own country, a population that accounts for 82% of the total population according to the 2025 census. To understand the causes, effects, and the future of xenophobia in South Africa, we will go back to the apartheid period, a dark spot in the country's history. During the apartheid, the black population was the lowest in terms of resource ownership in South Africa. They were not allowed to own properties, attend meaningful schools, work in meaningful places, or attend adequately equipped hospitals. Despite the country becoming a democratic one in 1994, the black minority remained disadvantaged. And what happens when one gets robbed of their property, rights, and freedoms? They become easily irritable and quick to anger. Now, where did xenophobia stem from? After gaining independence from the whites in 1994, Nelson Mandela, who was still in the America's list of terrorists, advocated for restraint from the black community who felt disadvantaged on all fronts. His clerical call made him refer to South Africa as a rainbow nation, being accommodative to all.
Brothers and sisters, we are one country. We are one people.
But that was on paper, since the black majority lacked necessities. By the time Nelson Mandela was exiting public office, he had become a darling to the same West that had labeled him a terrorist. He would be called the liberator of Mzansi, as South Africa is also known. When you hear the white praising you, you should watch your back because you're tripping. Anyway, I have done deep research on xenophobia, triggers, and effects. Although I do not approve of South Africa's approach towards immigrants, legal or illegal, I get their pain. If you were to get into the shoes of black South Africans, you would understand the pressure that is exerted on them by the system that was designed by the West. With a GDP of just $443 billion, South Africa is stretched. The latest census showed that South Africa was home to 63 million citizens, out of which 82% were blacks. Now, the shocking and worrying part is that the whites in the country nearly owned 80% of the total resources. When a gigantic man hits a weak person, the weak person does not retaliate since they would be fighting a losing battle. However, out of frustration, the weak person is mostly likely to turn and hit a weaker person. This perfectly describes and explains how South Africa works. The blacks might not be armed or equipped to deal with the whites, but they have about 5 million undocumented immigrants to pour their frustrations on. I will explain to you how this frustration by black South Africans on fellow Africans came to be. See, despite owning most of the resources in South Africa, the whites are frugal, borderline mean, without regard for the law. I followed Millicent Goge, a Kenyan remote worker who once stayed in South Africa, describe her experience in South Africa through Facebook posts and how she realized that the black South Africans were disadvantaged. Millicent states that the whites in South Africa loathe paying South Africans the bare minimum wage. Since they know paying black South Africans below the minimum wage is unacceptable, they resorted to some shady deals. They now prefer hiring immigrants, who in most cases are undocumented and therefore illegal. For some work that South Africans would get paid about 5,000 rands, the whites would pay illegal immigrants about 500 rands. You'll find Zimbabweans, Nigerians, Congolese, Malawians, Mozambicans, among others, working in these white-owned establishments. You will find Nigerians on Uber or Bolt with fake documents, driving taxis owned by whites. The whites will also get ZEP permit holders in overnight bakeries and other manufacturing or production lines, paying them a partly 400 rands a month. Since these immigrants come from countries where the system failed long time ago, they accept the offer. The illegal immigrants know that they are overworked but underpaid. What do? Nothing. Because reporting to the authorities would call for investigations, and at the end, they would get deported. When you see a South African person telling other Africans to go back to their countries, they might be projecting their anger on the wrong person, but are not entirely wrong. What makes everything even sadder is that the judicial system in South Africa is controlled by the white minority elite, and justice might never be served to the black population. What is my end point in this video? None. My opinion would never count if I directed to South Africans and the continent at large. Meanwhile, have a meaningful day and learn to hold your leaders accountable, lest you leave your countries seeking greener pastures in foreign countries where your presence is not welcome.